Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Blame It on Marketing with Emma and Ruta. We are going to be talking about product marketing and what the fuck product marketing is. And we've got a very special guest who is going to set the record straight. Ruta has mentioned this many, many times. And I think we're both probably in the same boat where we're a little bit like, what is it? And we're very confused. So anyway, over to our fabulous guest to introduce herself.
Well, thank you for having me. Very excited to be here. Always, I'm going to be the first person to raise their hand when looking for someone to blame. So I just knew that I belonged here. So I'm Talia. I've been in product marketing for the last 7, 8-ish years, both at kind of pre-IPO, more established companies and more scrappy startups. Been a founding PMM a couple of times, director of product marketing. Before then, I was actually in product. And before then, I worked as a PMO. So all the P's.
Talia knows what she's talking about, guys. She knows.
I'm so excited.
As long as it starts with a P, yes.
As long as there's a P in there.
Talya, before we get into the topic of product marketing itself, could you tell us a marketing confession from your career?
Oh, yes. Yes. So one of the companies that I worked at a few years ago, it was a direct-to-consumer company. It was a fintech company. So, handling people money, very serious business. Was basically doing at some point like all customer communication. So everything that was customer facing, I was in charge of. The thing is that a lot of our programs were outside the US, and in like non-English speaking countries. So we had a bunch of programs in Brazil and in Scandinavia and all of that. So one program, we had to translate everything to like 4 different languages. It was the same program. And let's just say that when no one's at the company is a Finnish, Swedish, Norwegian, or Danish speaker, it makes it a little hard because all these translations companies, like you really try to go with a good one and it's challenging. So there's been a lot of, really fun replies from customers on specific emails, be like, like that's like that, like who translated that? Did you do it with a Google translator? And we're like, no, we literally like we did not. This is really challenging. So yeah, that was a really fun, like 3 years with a lot of these. So I mean, I have been terrified from email lifecycle marketing ever since, and have not like at any company that I was at that I had to send something, even though like even in English, I would always insist that at least 2 people check everything that I do before I send it out.
We all mess up emails at some point, but yeah, when it's a translation one, you're like, that just hits a little bit differently, doesn't it? Because you're like, I really hope that I
Tried my
haven't
hardest.
offended the whole nation of, Sweden or something with my crap translation. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, or I mean, the potential of things that can go wrong is just infinite. It's like, could like maybe like accidentally, am I sending like the Finnish email to like the Swedish customers and all of that? Like, of course, like after a while, you kind of learn to at least identify the like, to like recognize the languages. But I mean, it's just been so like everything that we did, it was such a scrappy startup. Everything was so manual. So like, it was just the anxiety, like you could just tell me email marketing and I'm like, oh,
No.
I'm cold.
So, ladies, on to our main topic of conversation, which is product marketing. I have had some experience with in one company that I took off my LinkedIn. Everyone knows this story. We talk about it all the time. Had some beef with product marketing because I was customer marketing, Talia. So I want to know from your perspective, what is product marketing and what do they do differently to a regular marketer? And also maybe why is it different to customer marketing as well? Because yeah, then you can maybe resolve the beef that I had with those people.
Yeah, I'm going to resolve the beef. First of all, I love customer marketing. I feel like it's like one of like the best like pathways to product marketing, or like vice versa. Like if you want to like go specific in like a specific topic. I think kind of the most common definition for product marketing that you will see is, it's a group that sits kind of in between marketing and product and sales. Maybe people will add customer success to that, but I think even that definition kind of does injustice. So first of all, they don't necessarily sit right in the middle. So it really depends on the company. Some companies have product marketing way more closer to product. Some it's going to be way closer to sales. Some it's going to be probably the least common would be very close to marketing. But also there's a part of product marketing that is really important to understand, that product marketing should also like not just kind of sits between these like internal departments, but also product marketing has an ear to the market, whether it's from competitive point of view, talking to analyst relations, like stuff like that. But they really have to know the customers. They really have to know the market that they're playing in so that they can do their jobs well. And I feel like in that Venn diagram where that people like love to share about product marketing, that part is just like not there. And that's a big one in my opinion.
We kind of spoke about this in our prequel, but a lot of us, including me, I think, feel confused about what product marketing is, because there's a lot of stuff online, especially on LinkedIn, from either product marketers or with people that have lots of opinions about product marketing. And yeah, I just want to ask you about that, because it is not helpful, I don't think.
Yeah. So, I mean, LinkedIn can be a wonderful resource if you know how to use it properly. So, I think like in product marketing, because it's not like brand new, but it's not super established yet. So there are some great resources that you can go to. I think um for sure, for like the more beginner level, like the more basic things, product marketing association is really great. Like they have so many articles and examples and templates and things like that, so that can be like a great place to start from. There are some great product marketing folks out there. April Dunford, she's like amazing. I think she's kind of, I mean, I wanna believe that she's a superstar beyond the product marketing community. um she's so smart and great. And honestly, like you can just read her books and kind of get a really good sense of what that is. um but yeah, there is a lot of online advice about product marketing, and I think you really have to be, as in anything else, right? Like, we should all be like wear our critical thinkers hat, like super tight on our head whenever we go online, especially on LinkedIn, because there's a lot of wishy-washy type of advice. So I don't know, like when I see, and I think it comes in all levels, right? So when I see, for example, someone who's like a CMO VP level giving super vague product marketing advice, I'm like, I mean, like, and like they work at a giant company, right? Like not at a smaller company, that they've actually like been there, like know how, like have been there like in the trenches. Yeah, like I don't expect them to be sharing like super strong, practical, tangible frameworks, right? Like I would love to hear them from their perspective talk about leadership and working with different stakeholders, and how do you sell your, or like how do you convey your value to the CEO, and how do you get budgets, because like that's a huge pain point for product marketing specifically. How to work well with like with other teams at the company, like things like that. Like how do you hire, how do you like that type of things, like I would love to see from them. But like whenever I see you know some like vague advice from people like in those level, I'm like, okay, like maybe let's see when's the last time that you actually like did the thing. um and then on the other hand, you have lots of, product marketing advice from people who literally never worked at that, like never ever. So that's kind of, again, just be a critical thinker, and pick and choose whose advice you're going to take.
I think that's the thing that turns so many of us off, because we've talked about a lot actually over the last few episodes with people that LinkedIn has become this sea of like, it's almost like, I mean, my theory is that all of these people from Twitter came across to LinkedIn and have ruined LinkedIn for all of us. So thanks everybody, and in particular Elon Musk for ruining LinkedIn for us. But I think it's really difficult to navigate that, especially if you're more junior, and all of a sudden, sometimes I think what happens, product marketing lands in your lap. I think we've all probably been guilty of that. Maybe when we've been in a scrappy startup where we're like, we know we need to do some product marketing because we recognize, we sell a product, and that there is a need for us to like, realistically and concisely convey what our product does so people can really understand it and all of those sorts of things. And I think, yeah, what happens is that lands in someone's usually quite junior's lap. I don't know if you've had that experience, Talia, where like that's the way it's been treated. Customer marketing falls in the same category. It's like, we'll just give it to someone rather than hiring in an expert. And then you look on LinkedIn and you see this wishy-washy advice, and it's no wonder that you've got these people who are like floundering trying to figure out what the job actually is, and then confusing people like Ruta and I don't know if that's a really good summary or a terrible summary of the experience that people have, but that's certainly mine.
I actually think it's pretty accurate. So I think like a lot of and that's another thing, right? Like a lot of the advice, or like most of the advice you'll see on product marketing specifically, I don't think it's the same for other areas in marketing, but for product marketing, I feel like most like online advice is kind of like aimed towards like the very beginner, like very basic level. Um, it's like, you should talk to customers. I'm like, okay, great. Like, no shit. Like, have you ever tried to like do that and get like those approvals like inside a, like, we're like, okay, great. So like, I'm going to talk to customers. Like, what am I going to ask them? Like it's very simplistic. It's very basic. And it kind of sounds like the people who are giving the advice never actually done it. I think there's another group of people who have done it 1,000 times, but it's just like their target audience is kind of those, more like beginner level roles. So they kind of like really simplify. But people that like want to get better at what they do, and they're kind of like in that middle ground, or like they're beginners, but they've been around long enough to know that the really simplistic advice is not going to work for them. And I think like that's a gap, right? Because like the algorithm likes the fluffy content. It's not, it's not a secret. So you kind of like really have to pick and choose whose advice you're going to take. I think though, I think because of that, like, and I agree with you 100%. Like, I think you read a lot of job descriptions and they're describing some, like, the expectation is for someone who's been around, who has experience, who can pull things off. Again, like this is we kind of talked about this at the beginning. It's a very cross-functional role. And maybe a person that starts like literally like their first role out of college, like that might be difficult, right? Like you need to learn how to be like in a work environment a little bit, or like you need to be a really specific type of person to be able to kind of like be able to navigate that right off the bat, right? Like we can all do that. We can always we can all probably get to that level at some point. Like if we have a good mentor, if we have, if we have a manager that, is going to support us. But it's not going to happen like in the first month or even in the first 90 days necessarily. So I think like in those cases, I think the communities around product marketing are really strong. And I kind of go back to that. I think that's one of the reasons that product marketing specifically has like, there are so many communities for product marketers. And again, like some of them are huge online. I think like the PMA has, I don't know, like tens of thousands of people on their Slack channel, but there's also plenty of smaller communities. And if you can plug yourself into one of those, even better if it's, like a local one that you can actually have like meetups every once in a while, see people in person, and you can kind of find people that maybe are a couple of years ahead of you, that you can learn from. And that's like so valuable, because like that's the one thing that you don't have is experience. You can probably do a good job at that, but you need that experience. And if you work at a company that has zero training budget, and you can get that from the company itself, then you kind of have to go and forge those relationships and like figure it out. And this is a pretty good way to do that, I think.
One of the things that I'm really curious about when it comes to product marketing, and speaking of all the P's, I go on about this a lot. The 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. Most marketing teams are kind of relegated to the place and promotion bit. Does product marketing get to have like a actual influence on the actual product itself and on the pricing of the product at all?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. Like in theory, yes. So in product marketing, I think, like it really depends. Like the answer, it depends, is very like is very relevant, right? So it depends on the type of company that you work for. It depends on the type of product marketer that you are. So product marketers can, like, it's not necessarily that they're all gonna be generalists and like touch on every single aspect of product marketing. In some companies, when like maybe it's because they're like really big companies, or because of the structures, or because of the focus of their organizations, it might be, like product marketing might be more focused on specific areas. But yes, in theory, I feel like the product one is kind of outrageous, right? Because you would expect a product marketer, like they literally have that be in their title, like that they should get a say. But it's one of the most challenging things for product marketing, actually. Like if you go and ask, 10 of them, most of them are probably going to tell you that they don't have any impact or like any influence on the roadmap, but some of them will. And I think that's also where, again, like going back to the definition of product or marketing, like knowing the market is really important. And if you're the type of product marketer who's not focused on that at all, then influencing the roadmap is going to be very difficult. But if you do have that market knowledge, customer knowledge, like if you talk to the customers and analysts and kind of like hang out where your customers are, like if you know a lot about the market, then your feedback back to the product team, at least in theory, should be taken more seriously, right? But if you're a product marketer who's only working on launches and you don't have time to do any of the other stuff, or if you don't like, maybe it's just like not the focus, it's not like what your manager wants you to do, it could be for like 10 different reasons. But if that's the case, then influencing the roadmap is going to be very, very difficult. But it, again, like it also depends on the type of company that you work for, right? So there's also this question about, should product marketing report to product or to marketing? And it's kind of like one of those things that product marketers are even like, like they can even agree on that. Like it's not like a one size fits all. And I personally, when I was still like working in house, so like whenever I was like job searching or interviewing, I would always ask about, like about these things. So like I would ask, obviously, where would you like, who will I be reporting to? But also every single person I would speak to at the company, I would ask if they like, like how do you define the organization? Is it more like product led or sales led or marketing led? And it's not like a matter of is it PLG or not. It's like what function leads the company, what function leads the force. And I'm like, I don't, I'm like, I obviously, if because I want to have large impact, and I want to um be able to do my job the best way I can, and I want to be set up for success. So obviously I would want to be closer to that center of gravity of that company. So if it's product, great. We'll be like, we'll report to the CPO. Awesome. If it's marketing, then cool. We'll report to the CMO. So I think that has a huge impact on that question of how much, like how much influence you actually have on the product. With pricing, it's even a little more complicated, because pricing is something that companies don't love to touch often. And when they do, sometimes, I mean, product marketing should always be at least involved in that decision, right? Like, in how do we, like, do we tier? Do we not? Do we do this? Do we do that? And then like, what's like the actual number that we're going to put there? And product marketing can for sure lead at least like the research part, and can figure things out and can come up with recommendations. Um, but again, it really, it depends on the company, and like, you'll have a lot of people from sometimes from finance that are involved, from sales, from product, not necessarily all of them. So product marketing would not necessarily own that, but they should always be involved in that. Again, but it's just like not one of those things that companies like to play with super often. So I think product marketers with actual experience in pricing and packaging are pretty rare.
That's good to know. Yeah. I'm yet to find marketers that do have sway over that. I think it's even hard to like get product to build marketing instruments sometimes. Like, if you wanted to, something simple, like if you wanted to try some sort of a freemium thing, like product will freak out, and like you obviously need dev support to make it happen, and it's not a thing. So yeah, I'm both not surprised, but also wish it was better if your job title is product marketing, that you would get, by nature of things, more influence on the roadmap and what gets built.
Yeah, a freemium is so hard to pull off.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
From
But I
an
just mean it as
organization
like
perspective, yeah, I think like if someone from marketing thinks that like there's a case for that, like yeah, they will have to do a lot of homework to convince the organization
yeah.
to go for that. Like it's a
That's just
whole like it's
that's
a
just a
whole go to
random
market
example. I
strategy.
mean, like any
Yeah.
kind of like marketing instruments to get more people through, even if it's like click through demos, or whatever it is. It's so hard.
I was just going to say, even getting access to like back end usage data from like a SaaS product is nigh on impossible. Like, try asking product people, like, can we have a look at Amplitude or whatever it is you use, and be able to use that data, like for product marketing and customer marketing. I actually personally, all this stuff we're talking about for me is what kind of like really nicely brings together that whole problem with why there's like, then you end up with this sort of like rift and beef between internal marketing departments. Like, the reason that like I've had beef with a product marketing team before is because of this lack of influence over some of these things that we're talking about here. So where product marketing don't get to like influence back into the product, or where they don't get influence into the roadmap, and they don't get to have conversations around pricing, then you've got a department like customer marketing going, yeah, well guys, we really need to communicate this ASAP because we've got all these customers, and customers is where, increasing your ARRs at. And product marketing are like, no, you can't talk to product people, and that is where this kind of like rift, in my experience, this rift has kind of happened. Whereas if you are allowed to have influence and sway on those things, and the right departments are brought in at the right time into these conversations, you don't have this tension. I mean, it sounds like an ideal workplace, Talya. I don't know if you've ever worked anywhere that's actually nailed that. I'd be really interested to hear. But it's so hard because, like you say, then you just got all this tension mounting within the same team, which is just so unhelpful.
It's unhelpful, but also I think, I mean, I'm kind of, like any product marketer should be interested in those exact same things, right? It's like, this is not just like something like, I'm a product marketer. of course I want to know usage, like, because how am I going to measure the success of the launch, right? Like, how do we know if we did, like, if we did it right? um I want some proof points, right? Like, I'm doing product marketing and I'm saying all these, like, we have this like value prop, but I want to bring some proof to that. I want to be able to say, here, a customer that achieved that, or our entire customer base from this segment is doing, like, here's the results that they're getting. Like, I want to know these things as well. So I think customer marketing and product marketing, like, their interests are so aligned, right? It's like, even like, I can definitely see that as like one department almost, right? Like, I mean, different focus areas, but like the goal is the same goal. And product marketing should also want to communicate the value to existing customers. It's, I would argue, if it's even more important, because if you can't, like, if your retention rates are not great, like, that's not good. Most growth comes from expansions and retention, not from new business. In a healthy business, in a sustainable business, otherwise you just, otherwise every deal that you're gonna lose is gonna have major impact. So your existing business is crucial, right? And I would expect any product marketer to understand that as well. But yeah, I mean, to your point, yes, I like the pain of getting customer data is a real thing. Even we talked about email marketing before, especially if it doesn't matter if you're just in market, like in marketing life cycle, like doing these things, or if you're in product marketing for like a PLG motion type of product and you need those emails to, guide new users into, um, you know, um, getting more familiar and with the product and seeing the value, doing their trial or whatever. Even like getting those events that, because you, of course, you want to send emails that are relevant, that are timely, that make sense. Even getting those events from product can be really difficult because and I think that's a thing that us marketers always need to remember and to acknowledge, right? Like, we are dependent on, like, it's not just us and our, and maybe people like from the outside, like, they think marketing is just vibes and it's so cool and you get to be creative and all of that, but like, no, like, it has to be connected to everything else in the business. And yeah, so those relationships and that's way the impact and the influence that we have are key to our success.
I feel already vindicated, so thank you. So what would you say is the real impact of product marketing on a company's success, and like, why would that be different to any other kind of traditional marketing, and why product marketing can achieve that in a way that other marketing can't?
Well, I don't necessarily think it's about achieving it in a way that other marketing functions can't. I think, though, that when a product marketer understands, really, like, truly understands what other parts of marketing do and how they can plug into, like they can plug into those parts, I think that's the biggest unlock. um because again, like, I think in product marketing they're always talking to you about, getting your influence and sway with product and with sales, but like, no one talks about the marketing side, and that side is so important. So a lot of what product marketing does is really marketing strategy, right? So really learning and figuring out who your target audience is, like what your best customers look like, who's the ICP. So if you figure these things out, but you don't have that really collaborative relationships with other teams in marketing, like, maybe they'll keep targeting and spending money on the wrong accounts, right? Maybe, I don't know. But like, these teams have to work together. Same for the messaging, right? Like, we work so hard to figure out who's our target audiences, and to craft like all these positioning statements, to do competitive research, to figure out how do we speak about ourselves compared to them. So buyers, like, we do all that hard work. But then again, if you're not investing any time or effort or thought in figuring out how you're going to enable sales, in using these things, it's not going to work, right? Like BDRs, like, are they using these things in their outreach? Like, it's not like, if you did all that work and no one's going to use that, it's it's useless. Again, same for growth, right? Like, if you're doing a bunch of like paid ads, um or you've never, as a product marketer, you've never even seen the landing page that's being used for these like ads. So like, you won't, like, maybe they talk about like completely different things, and maybe they highlight like really, again, like things that are not relevant. um Same for like discovering different use cases, right? So like, we can do the targeting and we can do the content even, if product marketing just sits on all this information and doesn't share it with, or like enables the rest of the organization. And again, like, I'll keep hammering back that point. Usually it's talked from a sales enablement perspective, but the marketing enablement is as important, if not more even. um so yeah, I mean, I think you've definitely had. I don't know if I'm gonna save that beef you have, if I'm gonna solve it. I really want to though. Um because again, like, I feel like the customer marketing is kind of like, it's kind of like competitive intel within product marketing. Like, it can easily be thing, like, if it's a small company, it can be what the same person who's doing all these things. But like, they all have the same interest, right? Like, they all have this, like, the same goal in mind. So it's like, like, being in in an environment that kind of has like, that there's conflict there, is just, it's just like, that's not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, no, I was there for 6 months, and I think a lot of this was actually because of there was a toxic workplace culture. And there was also, like, I know, Talya, you were talking about, when product marketing are in there, who do you align yourself closest with, depending on who is kind of the most influential department. Interestingly, in this business, it was actually customer success, which is shocking because usually it's product or sales. So customer success kind of were driving everything. And therefore, you would have thought then that customer marketing would be able to kind of, navigate themselves to that kind of like position of power within the different marketing departments. But actually, because of that, there was a big threat for product marketing, and product marketing decided to gatekeep a lot of stuff. So there was just not, you just couldn't work together. So that, to me, was more of a kind of like, there's a company culture thing going on here rather than like a marketing specialism issue. So I think it was more to do with that. But I think that, even that stuff, as a product marketer, customer marketer, your job is to try and help resolve some of that stuff, right? So if you can't get the work out the door, or you can't navigate your way through difficult political situations, I think, Tyler, you already said you need to be a certain type of person to go into that role. I think product marketers and customer marketers are probably very similar in the types of people that they are. Like, we want to speak to customers, we want to do all those sorts of things. And so, yeah, I think part of our job is to call out crappy things that are happening that prevent us from working together effectively.
For sure. And I can, just like, as you were talking about this, I was thinking, like, the last in-house role that I had, me and the customer marketer, we were almost like an extension of one another, right? Because if I don't know, like, I'll give you an example. I came to the conclusion, like, we need, so to the selling motion was kind of like difficult, so we needed to get more people in the buying group like on board. So I was looking for like specific, really specific types of testimonials or quotes and stuff like that from personas or from different types of customers that we didn't necessarily have. The customer marketing was like my go-to person to make it happen. um Another example, like, we had a customer community, so we would both post there. So whenever there was a launch, I would post like something about the product, but like, they would kind of, you know maybe like lead some of the events that it would, like, that would include like the product people and like me and some other folks. So like, it was very we were truly like an extension of one another. We even had, like, we talked about those when you're really searching for some KPIs, right? Some like data from customer usage and things like that. We kind of hit a wall on that. There was a, like, with platform data, right? Like, even though we had a very known analytics platform that I'm not going to call out right now, but it wasn't really useful. But then we decided, we're like, well, like, what if we just go and like ask them, like, what if we did a survey? What if we did a customer research project?
Let's just talk
And
to
we
them.
collaborated on that together. It was a huge project, but it was so much better to have another person to do that with. So yeah, I mean, I really do think that these two roles go hand in hand.
It's, as you guys were talking about, like the different messaging happening across different places. I'm yet to meet a company where like sales, marketing, and CS talk about the same stuff when it comes to the product. They all have like varying degrees of difference, and good companies have it somewhat together. But in bad companies, you can literally, not bad companies as in they're morally bad, as in companies that are probably having a harder time performing. You can go in and sales will be selling one thing, marketing will be selling another thing, and CS will be training on a third thing. So yeah, it feels like product marketing could be something that helps to round all of that out, because you guys are actually knee deep in it all the time. But yeah, again, depends on how you're set up, right, and how willing someone is to go out their way and do that extra communication, because it's almost like then having to market your own work, right, which is strange sometimes.
But that's absolutely part of the job. That is absolutely part of it. Like what you just said is like 100% doing marketing to your own product market. Like that's 100% a part of it. And I think really good product marketers are kind of getting to what you were talking about by, and I know it's uncomfortable for some product marketers because they rightfully so feel like super, they're like stretched so thin, and they have like the longest to-do list, and there's like no resource, no budgets, no nothing. But being that person, being the go-to person at your company, is absolutely something that as a product marketer you should aim for. So being the person that whenever CS has like a presentation to a customer, and maybe like expansions, like we're not sure, but they kind of all of a sudden like they want to loop in someone else from their organization and kind of have like an overview, like you should be the first person that they Slack to help them with that. And right, and like you probably don't even need, same with sales, and you probably don't even need to like recreate this, like things from scratch. You probably already have, you know the good things, like the really hard work that you've done already. Maybe it's an updated sales deck, or maybe it's a use case deck, or like whatever it is. But you probably have those materials already that you can kind of stitch together to exactly what they need and help them, give them the talk track even. And really then, if there isn't like a standard deck for expansions, that if that exists, product marketers should absolutely be involved in that. Of course, like sales assets, like there's always going to be sales people like going rogue. But again, like if you're having conversations with these teams and you know what's not working for them and why they're going rogue, you can probably like help and come up with something that's better than what they have right now. And you really have to position yourself, I think, like internally, as being that person that they go to when they need something like that. And then they won't go rogue, and that that's going to be so much nicer.
Some people will, but for the majority,
yeah, sure. Some people,
someone's going to be using a logo from 4 years ago. Like, it happens.
Of course, yes.
we can't help
the wrong font
people.
That's going to drive you crazy.
So, Talya, obviously we're we're coming to the end of the episode. We've got one final product marketing question before we ask you your marketing gossip. So if you were going to do one thing, so say for example, you're in-house, you're a marketing team of one, you're a generalist, but you recognize there's some product marketing that needs to kind of happen. Where would you start? What's the one thing you would start with?
I think, again, it depends. Marketer's favorite answer. So if you already figured out that there's something that needs to change, if you identified whether like we're not talking, like we're speaking into like generic way, maybe there's like use cases, like more like we can be like more specific, or maybe we have no idea who's our target audience is anymore because a bunch of stuff changed in the market. And the last time we did that exercise was like 4 years ago. That also is very common, I think. It can be, like what we just talked about, right? Like there's like 17 different versions of the same sales deck and that every person uses something else. So like I think you kind of need to assess what's broken the most. If not, like if you have like, I think if you have no idea where to start from, I would start with just, I'm saying just like it's easy, but I would really start with making sure that you're like at least talking to the right audience, that you would know who your ideal customers are, that you really understand that. And when I say that, I don't mean like companies with over 500 employees in North America. That's not an ICP. I'm sorry. Like it needs to be and like some companies, that's the level of their ICP. Maybe they'll throw in an industry, maybe. But like that's not specific, like that's not good. So I think when you have a really tight definition of that, everything else becomes easier. So if that's where you should start from, then don't take the shortcut. Start from there. If you're not sure, do like a quick and dirty win-loss analysis. Like, and I don't mean it like you now have to find at least 12 customers who are willing to talk to you, because that's going to be really hard. But even look at CRM data from, I don't know, like the last 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, or something like that, and try to find patterns. Like try to see if something comes up. If you do see some patterns, you form some hypothesis, go and ask the salespeople who were involved, or the CS people that were involved, or that they're handling these clients right now. My go-to in these situations is, asking sales and the customer success people basically the same question in a variation, right? Like what makes, like salespeople, I like to ask, how do you know when you talk to a prospect, how do you know that they're a good fit, that they're likely to close? Because they know immediately. Like if someone is a bad fit, they can tell. Like they'll continue with the cycle because like that's their job, but they can tell. So great insights from that. Same from CS, right? You ask them when a client start implementation, how do you know it's going to be a good one? Like how do you know the adoption rate is going to be high? Like what makes a customer, like successful in your language? And also like they will, and again, like they won't necessarily tell you, oh, it's mid-sized teams from industrial sector. They're not going to use that language, but they're going to give you way more insightful information. You can figure out the firmographics and stuff like that. You can figure that out from the data. They'll give you the stuff that you can't find there. And then of course, if you have access, if you have time to go talk to customers and all of that, absolutely do that. Listen to all the gong calls that you want, like do all these things. But like at like the minimum, please talk to people that work with you.
No, we don't want to talk to people. I'm kidding. That's just
got to.
Everyone else wants to talk to people. I like to do marketing from a distance. Don't like to get too involved, if you know what I mean.
It's the best marketing.
Yeah.
Removed.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Talya. Those were some really good questions, actually. Something that makes me think about things, to say the least. Do you have any marketing gossip to share with us? Have you seen something lately, or just something that's been on your mind to do with marketing trends, whatever else might come up?
I'm seeing the thing that I've been noticing a lot. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, but there's definitely, I think, I'm just looking at my LinkedIn feed. There's definitely more of like the glorifying of being a solopreneur or a consultant or a fractional leader, and you start and you know, like there's always, and we didn't talk about like the toxicity of LinkedIn posts, like in that specific area, there's a ton of that. But I do start seeing way more people kind of like announcing on LinkedIn that they're quitting their full-time jobs to do that, which I find really interesting because I think, you know, so I decided to do the same thing about a year ago. In that last year, I feel that there's been like a certain, like so many other people are doing that. And, you know, maybe like, I don't think everyone's doing it for the same reason, which is why I kind of thought, you know, at some point we'll start seeing a lot of those fractional, you know, something go back to being like full-time employees. But I'm kind of, it's interesting to see people who work with, or like, I guess, who used to work at like cool companies, you know, like good logos and stuff like that, that look great from the outside, make that leap. And yeah, I think that's, I mean, I don't know if it's the you know, I'm kind of wondering if it's, are all companies like really not easy to handle
I think it's
as
bad
a
for
full-time employee? Like,
marketing.
aren't there companies with great cultures?
My theory on the company culture thing is we kind of had, and this is not me slagging off our friends in HR because Ruta and I are friends of the HR people, but because we work for loads of HR tech companies, so we don't want to upset anybody of the HR people. But I think in all honesty, there was a time where company culture was so important, you know, and leading into the pandemic, people were really actually investing in company culture. It sort of felt like we were turning a corner. I think we've kind of started to turn back the other way. And I think that probably has led to a lot of people going, actually, screw this. During the pandemic, I had flexibility. I was able to do stuff with my kids. I was able to take my dog for a walk. And now we're kind of going back into this sort of like, you need to be 9 to 5 at your desk. Where are you? You're not being productive. Our bottom line's hit. But these companies, obviously, I get it. Like, you know, global economy's in the toilet. People want to still pay their shareholders their dividends and all of that crap. But I think everybody's kind of like, I don't know, maybe they've stretched themselves too far. It's driving their company culture into the toilet at the same time. And yeah, lots of people are like, I want the
I think
good
also,
life.
yeah, being in marketing right now is an uphill struggle, right? Like the market's just not good. There's going to be certain industries that are doing well, that do well in a downturn. But if you're not in one of those, coming into work every day and being told you've got less and less to work with, but you need to make more and more is not fun. And in the most simple way, being a fractional, you can make the same amount of money as being full time on much less work and much less commitment into a company, and not having to be particularly worried if you're going to get fired or not because you have a contract or whatever the situation is. So I think in that way, it's also like both a push from the company side and a pull from the freelance side.
Yeah, and the challenges are different, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
there's
yeah.
there's plenty of challenges in that route as well. But yeah, it's really interesting. I think you would, I don't know, I used to think at least that like if you work for an amazing leader, it's, you know, it's worthwhile sticking around because you're just going to learn so much. And you see people that work with, again, like seemingly great companies just like decide to like jump ship and bet on themselves. And I just like I find it kind of interesting. And I'm like,
I
I don't
think we
know if
will
it's,
regress back at some point, I think, but it's just not going to be the next probably 4 years. I want to say it'll be a bit more than that once there's a new industry that's booming where we're needed. We'll jump back in. But yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a solopreneurship with AI LinkedIn moment for a while. Thank you so much for joining us. I feel like I'm a lot clearer on what product marketing is, and I can kind of see now that we've kind of been doing it but not really, and where the depths are that maybe normal marketers won't touch in product marketing. I hope you, for listening, you gain some of that knowledge as well, and you're feeling more confident in what this is. But thank you again. And I believe Talya is on blameandmarketing.com. If she's not, we will coerce her to be there. So you can go and ask her any questions that you might have about product marketing. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see everyone next week.